Hello, everyone. This is Fantasy Knuckleballers. I'm joined with Rich and Justin, and we are doing things a little bit different today. In the past few months, we've been doing MLB Fantasy Talk, but we're going to try something different, see how you like it. Please give us your feedback. We're going to concentrate specifically on the National League. We're going to forget about the American League. It doesn't exist for us right now. We're going to focus strictly on National League. And we did get feedback that the National League topics were interesting and that they wanted more of them. So we're trying to give you what you want and talk National League. And to be honest with you, that is our specialty. We are National League fans. So let's start things off and see where we go. So I'm giving you my two-start pitchers of the week. The first one is Austin Gumbar playing at the Mets and at Pittsburgh. Obviously, Pittsburgh's a really good matchup. The Mets, they've lost Conforto and a few other people. The Mets are really hurting more position players. So I think that makes it a really intriguing matchup. And obviously, the Mets have a really spacious field suitable for pitchers. So I think he's a really good play this week.
I like both your guys. Colorado is terrible outside of Colorado. And then Austin Gomber, other than that one terrible game, which I had him in my starting lineup, he gave up 7 runs in about an inning.
Thank goodness. We needed you to come back down to earth a little bit.
He's pitching good right now. And I like the matchups with the Mets and the Pirates. So,
yeah,
good job.
Great matchups there. Going on the road for a beaten up Mets, and then at Pittsburgh. I mean, that's a pitcher's dream right now, is going against the Pirates. So,
and I think really, if you look at it, there's a couple of teams you got to pick on. One of them is Colorado. Outside of Colorado, they have no hitters. Other than Trevor Story, they probably, I'm not sure, or maybe Trevor Story and Ryan McMahon. They don't have a very deep lineup. They have 2 or 3 guys that could start for other teams. But I would go against Colorado every time. I would go against Pittsburgh every time. And I think you could throw the Brewers. The Brewers are like batting 212 as a team right now. So I think you could go against the Brewers too. And help me out, there might be another NL team that you could go against. But if you pick in matchups, I would pick against those teams.
yeah, the Cubs aren't hitting too well right now either. But to your point on the Brewers, they did get Yelich back finally. So
yeah, I think that will help them a little bit.
Yelich is back, and then Heuer, I know he got sent down, but I read a couple of days ago that he's on fire in AAA, so he'll be back up. And if he can continue what he's doing down there, then they might turn that thing around. But until it happens, like you said, pick on them now while you can.
That's right.
The other ones I have for my two-start pitchers, David Peterson. He does get Atlanta at home, but like in his last start was against the Braves, and he threw 4 2/3 innings, 3 runs, 5 Ks. It's an okay thing. Like I say, it's a little bit of a dangerous matchup, but like we were saying, Colorado is much easier. He is pitching at home. Like I said, I think he has tremendous upside. Like he's going to I think he's going to stick around in the lineup once Syndergaard and some of the other players come back. The pitchers that are hurt, one of which being Carlos Carrasco. His upside's pretty good. And then Matt Peacock, he's kind of a lesser known starter. He was in the bullpen to start off this year. Injuries have killed everybody, and the Diamondbacks have been no exception. If you look at his numbers, his first start of the year was against Miami, and he gave up 3 runs in 5 innings, which wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible either. His last start again at LA, at the Dodgers, he went 5 1/3 and gave up 1 run, only 4 hits, no walks. And that's the really big key with him. He's given up 1 walk the entire year so far, and that will play. And if he can continue that success, not giving up walks and just keeping the ball alive, I think he's a very he makes for a pretty good pickup. And he's a 2-star pitcher next week, and you might just keep him going. San Francisco is going to be a tough matchup, and St. Louis to a lesser degree, but I think Matt Peacock, I'd pick him up as a speculative ad.
All right, you had me at Gomber and Peterson. I thought this is the one runs a trifecta. No on Matt Peacock. I will make the bet right now. We can
Oh
bet
no.
whatever you want to. Matt Peacock will have an ERA above 5 this week, and
Yeah.
0 wins.
I'm with Rich on this one. I mean, you're talking a guy that had 1 good start. Yeah, he doesn't walk, but man, the track record's not there, and he's going against really 2 bad matchups, in my opinion. There's no way I would even consider Matt Peacock.
Ooh. All right, we put this down as one of our end of the year bets here.
Put it down.
We have to have an official review all of these tapes and add these up at the end of the year. Yeah, like I said, he's only 27. He hasn't obviously he is a rookie. Sometimes it takes teams a little bit of time to catch up and see what the pitcher's doing in order to take advantage of him. But like, I'm a little worried about the San Francisco game, but I'm less worried about the St. Louis game. I do long term for the rest of this year, I do like him. I was trying to figure out how to pick him up off of waivers.
And just for the listeners, obviously this is a list of potential waiver wire pickups. We're not covering the guys like Scherzer and Kershaw, who we know are going to be already rostered in every single league. There's no point even talking about them. Obviously, those are going to be must-start guys this week. But this list consists of the guys that you might be able to find on the waiver wire and shove in there for a week.
In CBS NL only leagues, David Peterson's owned in 44%. Austin Gumber is 27, and Matt Peacock is 1% owned. He might
Soon
go
to be 0.0
after this week. Yeah,
could be. We'll see. Like, we'll come back. Our next show, we'll have 1 start in the books, but the second start will be kind of in waiting. So we'll at least see how the San Francisco game goes, and we'll be talking about that here on our next show. So look forward to that. All right, these are my pitchers to avoid. Trevor Cahill, and I believe he did go on the IL.
you were right on with that pick.
Yeah, stay away from him. He's on the IL. Zach Eflin, he's another one. I think Rich is kind of a fan of Zach Eflin, if I'm not mistaken. He goes on the road and faces 2 Florida teams, Miami and Tampa. The Miami game is going to be kind of up in the air, I think. As far as he did face Miami earlier this week and gave up 2 runs in 6 innings. That's not too bad. Like I said, he'll probably have he'll probably have a couple more runs, but he hasn't really been pitching all that great lately. He's given up 5 runs a couple times, and his strikeouts is pretty good. His walks have been increasing. He's been giving up quite a bit more hits. I think Tampa's going to eat him up personally. He might be respectable in Miami, but I think Tampa's going to eat him up. So it depends. if it's a weekly lineup, I'd definitely be on the fence there. Miami, I would start him with Miami. Jake Arrieta, he's another guy that he's had mixed results this year. In his last start, he gave up 4 runs in 5 innings against the Nationals. He's been walking a few guys. His whip has been pretty high. He hasn't been pitching well. And the last time he played Cincinnati, he gave up 7 runs in 3 innings. He does get Pittsburgh, and we've all wore that topic out. But it's just something I'm not really fond on. He's not a pitcher that I like this year.
No, he's Area at this point is a matchup only pitcher. Basically, do you like the matchup? He's probably your last starter on your roster. That you're considering putting in there, and then you're looking at the matchups for the week. Are they favorable? Are they not favorable? This one is arguably, even though he's got Pittsburgh. I agree with you. I would avoid all three of these guys. The one thing I do want to bring up, though, you didn't mention in either category, which I thought we would talk about, is Kyle Freeland. I imagine he's pretty low owned because we've been hurt all year, and he's scheduled to have 2 starts this week. And just as we talked about Gomber, he's going to be going against a depleted Mets and at Pittsburgh. So that could be. I know Freeland. He's one of those guys. He's either hot or cold. But he's one of those guys you might take a gamble on this week. Hasn't pitched in a while. He's fresh. He's got 2 great matchups. What do y'all thinking? What are y'all thinking on Kyle Freeland?
I think you could roll with Freeland. I guess the only concern I have with Freeland, he doesn't get you a lot of strikeouts. I mean, that's the biggest on him. But he does have good matchups. They're not playing at Coors this week. I like Zach Eflin. So for me, he's a matchup pitcher. If I had him, I would roster him. I might not start him every week, but I would gamble on a 2-start pitcher because he's going to get me more innings and Ks that week. And I would gamble on Zach Eflin this week. And Jake Arrieta, he's not a guy I would want on my roster, but if I could pick him up and just roll with him, he might hurt your ERA and whip, but he's going to get you some Ks, and he's got a chance to get you a win this week. So I don't know. I'm a little more of a gambler when it comes to pitching.
I just, for me, when it comes to pitching, when you're talking about your ratios, those are 2 of the hardest things to make up once you lose ground. So at this point in the season, that's where I'm at. If I have somebody who I think is going to crush my ratios, then I don't want anything to do with them.
Speaking of ratios, I want to take a little sidebar trip here. My pitchers have been doing really well. My starters have been doing fairly decent this year. I've been pretty satisfied with my starters in my NL only league. However, my ratios are getting bombed, and that's because I've got 2 closers that are crap, and I have not been doing well at all. Those are Daniel Bard and Steven Crichton for the Diamondbacks.
I thought you had Diaz.
I did pick up Diaz, but it was kind of a little too late because I have to roll with 2 start. I have to go with 2 closers because I'm hurting so much in saves. But they are just absolutely killing my whip and ERA, and my starters are not really able to overcome it. My starter will go out and give up 4 hits in a 7-inning game, and then Bard will come in and give up
you got
5 runs.
You got 3 closers right now. There's no reason to roll with. Basically, in that only league, 2 closers is enough.
Yeah, I've got Crichton on my bench, and
I'd put Bard on the bench. Creighton's going to get you more save opportunities, and he doesn't pitch at Coors Field. Yeah, I see that might be a matchup-based thing week to week. Who do you sit, Creighton or Bard? But I definitely wouldn't have both of them. Like you said, I think both their ERAs are 5+ right now. And Bard, he might not even be closing for long. They've been talking about
Well, they gave Givens the opportunity and he blew up. They gave him the ninth inning last week.
Yes, he did.
He lost the game. So I think that saved the job for Bard for the short term.
Bard has had a pretty decent week. It's not been perfect, but it's been an acceptable week for him, which is unusual because of his performance. Maybe he turns it around. I don't know, but you're right. I've taken Crichton out of my lineup because I can only afford to have one of them guys in my lineup. But for you, the listeners, it's something to think about. I went out and traded for Diaz. I gave up a lot for Diaz in my estimation, but
You know,
I needed to do that to get some saves and actually do something with my ERA and WHIP because it was getting
and
ugly.
another strategy for the listeners, if you need to lower your ratios, there's a lot of long relievers out there unrostered, and they're not going to get you saves, but you know they get you wins because they pitch more than one inning. And there's a few of them out there that unrostered that have a really low ERA and have a really low WHIP that can really help you. And you can get just as many innings as a one starter on the week. So you know, from my perspective, when I have a roster, if I don't like my low end starters, I get rid of them and I replace them with the long relievers who are good. And that seems to have always worked. And it's a good strategy. And I actually mentioned that a few weeks ago. I thought we should have a segment on that because it seems like people always target starters for some reason because they're going after those wins. But I'd like to find a study on that because I bet you if you take the top 4 long relievers versus any random 4 and 5 starters, those long relievers are gonna be higher in the standings as far as rankings.
I think you're right. I mean, there's guys that if you had them on your roster, I mean, I'll take the guy for the Cardinals, Gallegos, but Gio has great ratios, less than one WHIP. He has lots of Ks. He pitches lots of innings. I'd love to have him on my roster, just to name one guy. But you make a good point. There's several guys out there that really can help you in the ratios. My struggle sometimes, and I'm low on Ks, so I'm looking for those guys that can help me in the K department. A lot of times they're starting pitchers, and they hurt my ratios a little bit. So it's kind of my struggle right now. I'm trying to catch you in a couple different departments. So
hey man, now's the chance. The Grum haven't had the Grum in 2 weeks. It's killing me. But another example is Trinan. I had him early on, and I'm dropping him because he'd started the season. It was really rough. He was, he was giving up, 1 and 2 and 3 hits every appearance, and his WHIP was scary. I'm like, I gotta get rid of this guy. But if you look at him now, I mean, he's got 4 or 5 wins already.
Yeah,
as a long reliever, and he's finally getting back to where he was. He's had a few good. He's had 4 or 5 really good outings where he hasn't. He's limited the damage. So that's another good example.
Well, I think if you target relievers off of teams that have good pitching staffs, it's going to keep the teams in the games. And they're traditionally a good pitcher. You might find some success there, especially with the wins and potentially even saves. The Dodgers have been giving a lot more saves to other closers this year, and so Trian is not a bad pickup. And like I said, there's probably 2 or 3 pitchers in that bullpen that I wouldn't mind having, outside of Kenley Jansen, because you could definitely get wins and saves there. I think the Mets have a pretty good bullpen too. I know Trevor May has been doing really well. He was one of the guys I liked at the beginning of the year. But yeah, you're right. Like, um, yeah, that's a pretty good strategy. Well, maybe we'll go more in depth next week or down the road. All right, let's move on. Here's some streaming pitchers you can pick up. Tyler Anderson. I know we've dogged the Pirates all year, but they have quietly put together not a bad season. They're still in last place, and they're talent wise they are deficient, but they've got some surprising some players on their team that's been, I guess, turning some heads. Well, I guess if they, depending on where you live, and if you're not in the Pittsburgh area and you don't follow baseball like that big, you could have totally missed out on Tyler Anderson. Um, Outside of his last start against Atlanta, that was absolutely abysmal. He's pitched fairly well. He gave up 9 runs against Atlanta, which is not good. He gave up 4 against the Giants, but prior to that, um, he's given up. He he pitched in Chicago on the 9th, pitched 8 innings, 2-run baseball. Um, gave up only 4 hits, and like I said, he's had a lot of outings like that this year, and he's playing against the Cubs again at home. I think it's a pretty good matchup. It's a pretty good streaming start. Trevor Williams, he gets Pittsburgh on the 26th. I've not been a big Trevor Williams fan over the last this year, but like I said, the matchup is there, and he hasn't been pitching that badly. In his last start against Pittsburgh, he gave up 2 runs and got 6 strikeouts in 4 innings. Um, he's kind of been a mixed bag, but like I say, if you need a streaming start, that's not a bad starter to go with. Miles Mikolas, he was on my list, and then he went out yesterday, pitched a couple innings, and got hurt again. So obviously, the Cardinals are going to be are scrambling. Not a good. Like I thought maybe him being on the injured list all year and last year, that a lot of people might have dropped him by now. But obviously he's not a good start this week. One guy I want to focus on is Albert Alzolay. He gets Cincinnati on the 28th, and I know Justin wasn't very high on him this year when he was reviewing some of the only draft. He had a lot of potential last year when he did start. He's been pitching really well this year. He has a 4.3 ERA, which can be misleading because his WHIP is 0.86, and that just gives me a sign that he had some bad luck. In his last start at St. Louis, he gave up 2 runs in 7 innings with 6 strikeouts. He hasn't been walking much either. In the last 3 starts, he's given up 1 walk only, and none in the last 2. So he's been throwing strikes. He hasn't been walking people, and he's been keeping the ball in the ballpark. Cincinnati on the road has been abysmal. They've got a lot of injuries with Senzel, Votto, Moustakas on the DL. I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be on the IL, but Cincinnati's injured. Outside of Castanelli and Winker, Cincinnati's offense has been kind of putrid, especially on the road. So I see this as a really great matchup. I picked him up in the NL only league, and I have been totally tickled. So like I said, I would roll with him the rest of the year. What are your guys' thoughts?
I like Alzolay. I'm with you on Alzolay. Tyler Anderson, no. Trevor Williams, no. They walk too many batters. And I go back to Matt Peacock. Last 28 days, ERA 6.48. Aaron, you going down on your pick?
Going down.
Yeah, I like Alzolay here just on the matchup. Typically there's no way I would recommend a pitcher going against Cincinnati, but like you said, all their left-handed hitters other than Winker are out. So it's a good matchup this week for sure. And they're not at Cincinnati; they're at Chicago. So,
all right, Rich, let's get to your sneaky waiver picks, the NL version.
Okay, I'm gonna make it really quick. Brad Miller, Philly. He plays multiple positions. I believe he qualifies in our league as third base and outfield. But really sneaky power, has 30 home run potential. He's only going to get you 13, 14 at bats, but he is going to get you some power. What I'm looking at it with this pick is if you got to put somebody in the lineup, you got an injury, somebody on the IL, you need to pick somebody up that's not going to throw you a zero. Brad Miller's a good guy.
Yeah, I love the pick here. You all know I love players with multi-position eligibility, and this guy, you can pretty much put him anywhere, which also increases your flexibility in your lineup, but also means he's more likely to play throughout the week to fill in spots.
Solano, he is coming back from an injury. It's the only reason he's probably available. He's got to hit 300 in 2020 and then hit 300 in 2019. He's mainly a batting average only guy, maybe some runs. Wilmer Flores is hurt. I believe Tommy LaStella is hurt. He's going to be your second baseman, so he's going to get starting at bats. I like Solano for that, for second base, especially with so many teams struggling for batting average. If you're hurting for batting average, and your team is struggling, he's a guy that can help you. Mauricio Dubon, he's a guy I struggle with liking, not liking, but what I like about him right now, he's hot. Over the last 7 days, he's had 24 at bats. He's batting 330. If you follow that up and look at his 2 week stats, he's batting over 300. He's a guy that earlier in the year was only getting maybe 12, 13 at bats. Now he's getting 24. I'm a big believer in the team that has the most at bats has the best chance to finish first in the counting categories. So I like him. He also has multiple position eligibility. He plays shortstop. He plays outfield. The thing he has potential for is stolen bases. I believe with steady playing time, he can get you 10 stolen bases and possibly 10 home runs. He's a guy that I'm just really, he's a bench player who maybe I plug in and start. But if I'm needing an outfielder, which outfielder is really weak position right now, he's the guy maybe I'm looking at picking up and putting him in the lineup for a week or two. And then my last guy is Tyler Stevenson. He's a guy, and I think we talked about him earlier. He's a big bat that just needs playing time, a big time prospect. The bad part of it is he backs up Barnhart, who won a Gold Glove last year and is having a career year so far this year. But I look at some point this year, the team is going to have to give Tyler Stevenson a full-time role at catcher, or either at catcher first base if they end up having to sit Votto or Votto gets hurt or stays hurt, Stevenson could be the starting first baseman. I see no reason, especially if the Reds get out of the race, that we're not looking at August, September, maybe even July, Tyler Stevenson picking up 60% or more of the ABs out of the catcher role. And if he does that from an NL only perspective, there's maybe only 4 or 5 guys that you would want ahead of him. And because he does have that good bat. And if you're one of those guys that you're playing a Jan Gomes or somebody like that as the 10th catcher, or you've got somebody from the Braves, Tyler Stevenson is the guy that you could plug in and you're betting on the upside.
You got one more.
Oh, and my last guy, I pick a lot of guys, but my last guy is mainly just opportunity with Pilar out, Nemo out, and also Conforto out. They got to start somebody. They picked up Cameron Maben. The thing I like about Cameron Maben is speed. So he's a good fielder, so that's why he always has a job. He also has some speed, and it looks like his bat's gotten better over the years. But it wasn't too long, maybe 2 years ago, that he had a 10 homer, 23 stolen base season. So I'm looking at him getting a lot of playing time in New York, and I don't see why he won't at least produce and get you some stolen bags, since that's something that not a lot of players can give you these days.
I like your list. I will have to say your 2 San Francisco players. I think they're being propped up a little bit right now based on the series against the Reds that they just played. They destroyed the Reds. The Reds haven't been able to play San Francisco well since that playoff game where the Giants came in here and took 3 of the last 5 games to win that series. So I think the San Francisco bats will cool down a little bit, not playing the Reds. Tyler Stevenson, I'm 100% with you. I like his bat. Tucker Barnhart's still going to get the majority of the bats, but while Votto is out and some of the other players are out, they're shuffling players around. I think David Bell has shown the tendency to not be afraid to use that second catcher in game situations. So I think Stevenson will get a lot of bats. And Cameron Maybin, if you really deep league and you need at bats, that's fine. I'm not putting too much into that. I do really like Brad Miller as well.
I really like the Stevenson pick here, since with the first base eligibility as well. I like the 2 San Fran guys as well. So
email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com. Catch us on Twitter at fknuckleballers, and check out our site at fantasyknuckleballers.com. Thanks, and like I said, look for us soon for the next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.